Hi, Carlos. This is Jeff Allen, and I'm gonna go ahead and give make a video reply to your post here. I think that it's just easier and faster to do it in a video format, and then kind of I'll be able to answer a bunch of questions, and then I'll make all these into different pieces of separate videos as well, to because sections of them have answered different questions on different posts and LinkedIn and elsewhere. But at least I'm going to try to put it all here in one kind of blog post, and then I'm going to answer some of the questions to other people as well because they brought them up. So I'm kind of trying to address everything at one time. Um, and then people won't say to me, too long, didn't read, kind of effect, because a video people will listen to, because they can do it without reading anything. They can listen while driving a car or any whatever. So and I'll slice up in different sections, I said. So the first thing I want to say is for the question of empty, okay, just empty in general. In my background, I've worked on a lot. You can look at my LinkedIn profile. You'll see I've done a lot of empty stuff and empty roles and just empty post editing empty. So this I wrote the book chapter on it. So I've got a Microsoft Translator T-shirt. Okay, see that? Got a Microsoft Translator T-shirt. Not only have one, but I actually have two of them. So I got another one too. So get to them. And if Google Translate had it, then I'd have a Google Translate T-shirt too, and all that. And and so it's kind of fun to have those T-shirts because when I give talks, I usually wear the T-shirts to be able to talk about MT and MT post editing and all that. And in the history of that, just go watch my video talk at Microsoft. I was invited there, and the first couple of minutes, just look up Jeff Allen Creel Microsoft, and just to find the video pretty quickly. And in the first couple of minutes, just after the intro, I'm giving away T-shirts, and so the history of that was I came and gave away all the T-shirts to the talk I was coming to give, including some multilingual T-shirts to the people that hosted me and all that there, and then just after lunch, they came and gave me a couple T-shirts, Microsoft Translated T-shirts. So that's kind of the history of that. But um, the things that I think are important in your kind of LinkedIn post to address an MT post editing, it addresses a lot of different topics that I want to address here. So I mean, you talk about subtitles or MT post editing in general, okay, already. Then you address the issue of subtitles, which is a niche topic along with captions. And then you address some pricing issues. And then you address things that could say it's about poor solution selling. So sometimes the tasks not being paid and planned and all that's a solution selling problem, or it's a poor solution selling, poor service selling kind of upselling situation. Then some other things that were brought up, and not just in the responses too, was about terminology harmonization and terminology research. And then, like you mentioned, you've done a lot of different projects and like in a lot of PM kind of roles, and even the translation roles and the production roles. And I would refer to them as the good, the bad, and the ugly. There was a film, a U.S. film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or something like that, or at least a quote in one of them, a Western film, kind of a cowboy film. And then there's some things that are about the current situation, the fragmentation of the language industry, and then there's questions about the feedback loop. Um, so there's lots of different points in here that I want to address. So this is not going to be a 5-minute video, okay? But I want to address all of them with a lot of experience in all of those things and in different roles in doing it. So not just in developing solutions, but being on the development side, the solution provider side, both in sales roles, both in production roles, in research roles, in customer service roles, and post editing trainer of the post editing, and having done the post editing, and have written articles and publications about post editing, all that, plus being on the customer side in several different customer, buyer side companies that have bought or licensed um, such tools, and haven't been in the professional service. I started, I forgot to mention, being the professional service side of actually going and doing the professional services of deploying it and training people on it. So I mean, I've had a lot of different roles on both sides of the fence on this, and so I think that some of the things you brought up are really good questions, and really good points. And I've been talking about them for years, but here it's kind of to put it in one place, and to mention them again and answer some questions because these are burning questions. Okay. So the first thing I want to do, and I want to make sure that I don't forget to mention the subtitle one, because I forgot to actually put that in my. I kind of like have a little outline here to kind of keep me going to remember what I'm. It's easy to forget things, so I just want to make sure that I've got that. Um, the first thing I want to kind of talk about here as I'm going. Oh boy, I got 8 points here, so there's going to be number 9. Um, so the first one I want to cover is I think it's a really key thing is the we have in this industry, and I've noticed over the past 30 years, is we have this lack of cross fertilization and cross pollination um, in the industry with other industries. So if you look at things, it's the majority of the people that are creating the language technologies and the solutions, language translation technologies and solutions, have been in this language service and solution industry from the start of their career. Okay, very few of them have worked elsewhere first. Few, I mean there are, but there are very few. So they've grown up in this language industry, which has its own issues. Okay, and we're going to come to those. So there's this lack of cross fertilization and pollination, I call them. There are other kind of analogies, but those are kind of the easiest one to understand. And if you can go to LinkedIn profiles, people's LinkedIn profiles, you'll see that their resume, you'll see that there's a list of different language service providers or solution providers or technology providers. There's always in this, and freelance work and language teaching jobs. It's always in the language, linguistics, translation tool industry, pretty much. So that creates this bubble effect, which makes it that people won't benefit from other ideas and things of how to do things. There's little movement inside and in and out of the industry, and and several people have come to me in the past and said when they looked at my resume, said, "Wow," or they looked at for us, said, "You have been in both sides, actually in different industries too, and doing other things." And yes, I've been through the several world economic crises situations. There have been several. There's the dot-com crash, and then 9/11, and then the 2008 economic downturn. All of them kind of caused me to have to leave the industry, so 3 times, and to go have other full-time jobs. And so that each time when I came back to the language industry, I brought in some other experience from something else, from the big data, telecom, network optimization software, or working in business analytics software, or working in financial enterprise performance management software companies. And those helped me to look at the whole MT thing that I was already in and out, and to look at it differently, and to come up with ideas and approaches that are just different. And have better even some productivity results that just people say, how do you do this? And just because I'm not using those that are standard MT or standard translation memory or standard CAT implementations, I do something completely different because I'm borrowing from other ideas, other industries I've done it at, or done things there, and then kind of reuse the ideas differently, adapt them, and adopt them. So this lack of cross industry experience can actually be found in a lot of different roles. If you think about it, you see it a lot in the MT development teams, okay, and and especially in the commercial MT development teams, companies that they're trying to resolve a communications problem and not a translation problem. They're trying to do the Star Trek Universal Translator. They're trying to resolve a communication issue between languages for content gisting and understanding, rather than try to resolve a true translation focused problem of translating for publication purposes, which what translators do, okay, and interpreters, but translators mainly. And then you find the MT development teams will have this lack of cross-industry experience in general. I'm not saying it's everyone, but there's a lot of it's kind of jump. Project management roles, same thing. Project managers, they always just have been jumping from company to company for every reasons, but it's always in the language industry. Sales and business development, same thing. Sales and business development roles, always been in the industry and not come from elsewhere. And then even translator roles, where there's an ongoing debate of whether or not a degree in translation is necessary versus or not, versus is it more valuable to have domain specific expertise and knowledge? And there's a big debate on this all the time. So it's always all these people just thinking you got to have the translation experience, and not considering other industries, which is really important to think about. So because people have been in this whole industry for the whole time, they think in the mindset of the mentality and the paradigm of how this industry has been functioning for the past 20, 30, 40 years with the tools. And so that experience has created an effect that doesn't that that it just we'll see here as I'm talking, because I think this is really important to put it into kind of the mindset and why we're in post editing we're struggling, okay, with this whole set of what you're saying. The other thing that I want to mention is the language industry fragmentation. Uh, so the I'll give a couple examples. I won't say the company names or anything, but I'll just kind of point to them and point to like things that I've written about or their publications about. So there have been examples where I have been involved in having to go train some enterprise level projects for MT, and got to a certain customer site and discovered that the training that had been done by the MT solution provider had been a webinar for like 2 hours, which is not training. Okay, that's not training. That's a webinar. It's not on-site training going through doing hands-on, which I've done many times before for post editing. I always do really hands-on practical training. I've run into situations where it just has not been done in an enterprise level sales thing. Okay, and a deal, and at times I had to clean it up. So that's happened. Have had another situation where there had been a sales of project, and it just got completely underestimated, and it turned into a major double cost. Okay, but there, and then there's and people not being able to have access to things and all that. There've been another example, say one where I've seen in sales that going out and trying to qualify enterprise level sales, opportunities, that it just trying to talk to the IT company, the IT departments of all these different big enterprises, companies, and selling them a solution. It's just amazing how you can't have access to a content management system for the translators, for the authors and the translators. There's no access. And getting access is poor. It doesn't exist. And the reason for this is not a technical one. It can be resolved technically. There are plugins and all this kind of stuff you can do, but no one wants to pay for it. No one wants to pay for people to have the access and to train the people to have access, to train people how to do the task on that system, because there's a claim that no one wants to pay for it. And it really comes down to is that the language service providers don't want to pay for it. They don't want to pay their translators to do the work because they don't want to pay for this in-depth training for this one project. Okay. Freelancers that are working on the project don't want to do the training for free because they might not even get the work out of it, and they won't be able to reuse that training in that specific project. And they're giving away they're going to a training class for free rather than actually getting paid for the work they're doing for a project. Okay. Customers, people claim all the time customers don't want to pay for it, and I've seen no customers don't want to, but that's not always true. That's not always true. I'm going to prove this. Customers don't want to pay for the MT and the MT post editing training of the service providers because they think that machine translation should be a push button task. That's what they're sold them as, okay? It was sold them as a push button thing, and this has been published in magazines. And I come back and said, no, it's not that. And if they admit later on, yeah, it wasn't really a push button task. I mean, you can see this in articles published in multilingual magazine or other. I mean, it comes out later down the road. The customer discovers that it's not a push button task. It's just not automatic completely. You got to invest in it. Terminology research. I mean, another thing of who wants to pay for it. Okay. It's a time-consuming task. Terminology research is a time-consuming task. Who wants to pay for it? Well, a lot of people just kind of translate. They do it as a side extra thing, but no one wants to pay for it. And then feedback loop. Who wants to pay for it? Who wants to pay for this time that you're investigating, making testing, where you're actually doing the work, doing the MT post editing or something, And the whole back and forth is a time-consuming task for the translator. Who's paying for it? The patent translator is doing it, but it's not being paid for. Okay, so these examples are kind of, I call this the language industry fragmentation effect, or maybe I can find a better term for this. But you know, really it comes down to having well-planned projects of new authoring projects or new MT implementation projects. And those projects need to include always plans to train people and provide a support thing. Okay. Um, and in this industry, we're really bad at this. Okay, we're really bad at this. Uh, and I'll take out of this industry. I mean, I go to any big major company that even the company I'm working right now, SAP, but other Oracle or big Salesforce or whatever, all these big companies that sell big projects, and they sell fully planned projects that are all tasked out, and they sell expensive consultants to work on these tasks. The tasks are all planned out. They're paid for by the customer. The customer billed down to the hour. Sometimes it's all kind of figured out, and you got to pay for everything in an enterprise level kind of deal. And because it's consulting, and everything is paid. Okay, so okay, sometimes not, but I mean it's planned. This is a planned thing. All these kinds of tasks are planned. Now I'm going to say that in general, the language technology industry, both solution and service, are just really doing a poor job at this of selling MT and selling MT post editing and selling terminology work as services of a bigger project. Just upselling. A lot of companies are just really bad at this. I've seen this, and I've done a bit in sales as well, and I've seen it, and that's the reason why the pricing value is so low. It's a low value. It's a low feeder kind of market. It's crap prices. Okay, it's because the people selling the solutions are not doing a job of selling big projects, fully planned, and convincing the customers that you have to have a big project. It's the salesperson's problem. That's where it's coming from. It's not a technology problem. Okay? It's not. It's coming from that. And so that's kind of my comment there. And people will not be happy I'm saying this, but it's true. Okay, it's just true. Um, and go look at the big companies where they sell big deals. This is what you do. You sell the whole thing. Sell the whole thing, the whole package, all the services. Okay, and it goes, but it's costly. Okay, it's costly. Now pricing. Point 4 here. The pricing, and I have sold and implemented solutions and services that have included the following points, like not just a 3-step translation edit proof TEP cycle, okay? Not a 1-step or anything where it's just draft translation or whatever, but I have sold above and beyond the 3-step, the TEP completely. I've also, in the projects I've sold in the translation industry, okay, I've sold a specific fee for pilot projects. I've sold a percentage for project management. I've sold a percentage for desktop publishing, DTP. I've sold a specific fee for hourly or per entry terminology work, etc., etc. Okay, and it can be done because I've done it. I've just done it. So if the question here is if it's not being sold, then the reason is why. And so the questions might be, does the customer want a short-term cost-cutting solution? That might be a reason. Or does the customer want to really implement a long-term project with overall return on investment, ROI, with improved quality, better content leveraging, etc.? That's another question to ask. Or are there many salespeople who are just not selling the projects and the services and the project and services for the value that they should be? Okay. And all this comes down to educate the customer, educate the customer, educate the customer, educate the customer, etc., et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Educate the customer. You got to sell them as big projects. And so there have been several large implementations with published customer testimony case studies. You can go look up on the Sistrand website for the Symantec implementation in the press releases or the case studies. You can go find the one on the EADS and Sistrand site. You can go look at a number of the Caterpillar project, MT project conference talks. You can also look up some of the General Motors conference talks from 1998 to the Caterpillar one. You'll find a lot of them in between 1996, maybe even a little bit earlier, because Multilingual Magazine actually had an article in 1991 from the top of my head. And then they had a couple of articles, but then they had a lot of conference talks, mainly at the Claw Talks and some MT. They went until probably 1998, maybe a couple of them into the year 2000-ish. So about a decade of a few talks and things. General Motors had a lot of them between 1998, 1999, and probably about 2004. Okay. And there are other kinds of examples like this where you'll find these companies that go and talk about what they're doing. Symantec did quite a few localization world talks too, in addition to that, the case study I mentioned. So if the language industry really keeps treating machine translation, post editing, and MT feedback and terminology work as just extra tasks that have no value, that have no selling value, then it will just go around and around and around and around and around and around. And the problem is we're not charging these services. You know, the salespeople are just not convincing the customer to pay for the services. Upselling. Okay, this is just how it goes. And people say, well, the customers don't want to pay for it. Well, I'm calling that's a bunch of BS. Okay, this is BS. I have sold projects, I've implemented projects, sales of services and professional services where all the services were paid. Okay, it's been done. It's just you got to convince the customer to pay for it, and so that's kind of what it is. The kind of thing is the narrow-mindedness of the language industry companies, service solutions, where there's kind of this narrow-minded about hiring salespeople. And I've seen examples of this where I was trying to help a friend, colleague get a job who had a lot of experience in other industries, but couldn't get into this market and was really successful in sales in other fields, but couldn't get in because, oh no, the person's got to have language service industry sales. That's crazy. That's just totally crazy. Such companies need to stop thinking and hiring people. Stop just hiring people only with language industry experience, because language industry people that have been locked into the mindset of this whole mindset of low value pricing for 20 or 30 years in this bubble, and they've been grown up with this, and that you got to do it this way. They're not going to sell the services, not going to upsell stuff, and they're not going to know how to sell it because the customer won't accept it. That's BS. I'm sorry, it's BS. This industry needs to hire salespeople from other industries that can sell real enterprise solutions and service projects, period, because they will sell the big projects to customers. They will create the value. You just got to have salespeople know how to do this. So that's kind of I think that's a crux, and people don't address this, and I'm addressing today because I've seen it. I've been in and out of this language industry several times, and I've worked in other industry too, and I sold the things and seen how it's sold, and it's always sold with big projects. That's just how you do it, the whole shebang. And we just, in this industry, people are not good at doing that. Okay, that's pretty hard. So you need to hire people that can do that. Not language service people, that people have been always in the industry. And that's also the reason why I only work on projects that are serious. Okay, I qualify my projects, MT ones, or I qualify a project I'm going to work on, or I'm going to even implement, or I'm going to even propose or suggest. But also the ones where I help people to say, hey, you want to work on this MT project or something, and go watch my Prozzy Virtual Conference 2012 talk on qualifying and managing MT projects. And I specifically say, here are the questions you need to ask to qualify whether MT project is worth working on or not. MT and MT post editing specifically. I gave a talk on this, on the questions you need to ask if you're going to do work on it or not. Okay. And it's up on my website, so you can find that on my YouTube channel. It's Prozzy Conference 2012. Okay, so it's just called MT something something. Can't remember the exact title, but it's from that there the few of them there that I can find. And then another thing to say is learn to say no to more projects than you say yes to. Okay, learn to say no more than say yes. This is like number two of my rule of 10 values, and I've given at a university Gdansk talk up on my website, on my YouTube channel, and in a recent video, a shorter video I recently in this kind of format, um, where I talk about the 10 keys to being successful in any job. But I mentioned the translation industry, but it applies to everything. Just applies to everything. Learn to say no more than say yes, and that allows you to work on the things that are right and not the things that will lead to a disaster. Okay? Um, and there have been situations where customers have you know come to me to fix it or to do it right. Um, and I don't. That's why customers are ready to come to me for that kind of thing. And I don't do a fly by night, quick fix solution. I don't believe that's good. I believe that you have to do it right. And so there's that kind of thing here, and I'm gonna kind of I'm bringing up because there's other articles I've already written or videos, and it's better go read those for more in-depth stuff. But I'm just kind of covering it quickly here in this fast format. Um, Another thing that has happened, and that's case in this whole MT scenario thing, is there's been there are a lot of situations where the situation is a repurposing of empty solution for the wrong or an inappropriate need. And this is called the inbound inward versus the outbound outward dilemma. Um, and and just the concept of repurposing I'll get to here is that what I said in a multilingual computing technology article back in, I think it's 2004. I got here, it's number 62. So it's number 62, issue 62, March 2004, and a supplement article specific about machine translation. I wrote the intro to the whole series of articles, and I just had a one-page intro, and it's called the intro is called thinking about machine translation. And I said in there that the MT failures that I've seen over time, MT post editing, are due to a repurposing without reworking the implementation, because the approach to the system that was used had been already used for one thing, and then the company said, oh, we want to use it for another purpose, and they repurposed it, but they didn't rework and adapt the solution, and so it turned into a failure because it had not been reworked. The repurposing was just, oh, we just want to apply it to this other scenario too, without re-looking at it. So bad decision. Um, so why is that? Because there's inbound and outbound. I'll just quickly explain what it is, and then there are a couple, presentations and stuff you can go look at for more details. But really simply, inbound and inward translation versus outbound. So inbound and inward translation is basically content gisting. There's an article, a newspaper article, or some content. I don't know what it is in my language I don't know. And so I'm going to do content gisting. I'm going to run it through an MT system to understand the article, to get a gist of the article, and and it's okay if there's errors, because I have a tolerance level. I'm just trying to get anything about that article to understand. Okay. And sometimes this can be also been in the translation when you create a draft translation, where like if a company wants to decide, hey, we want to publish or we want to translate a book on archaeology or something, and it's in another language we don't know, and we don't want to pay for the translation yet. We want to do the translation as a publishing company, but we want to get an idea of what it's about from the content. So they'll run it through an MT system to get an idea of what the content is, just to kind of get an idea of what it is. And then that's used to qualify and say, yes, okay, now we want to go forward and actually do a translation of the book. This is used for just getting it's content gisting, another kind of thing. And there are other kind of examples of this in meeting minutes, agendas, and stuff. It's okay if it's not perfect, because it's the lifespan of it might not be that long. That's just called content gisting. Okay, tolerance level of accuracy. Just need to get content gisting. The opposite is translation for outbound or outward, and that's called translation for publication, because you're trying to sell. The company's trying to sell a service or a product, and so they'll ask translators to do it, to do the translation to have a high quality translation because that's a reputation, brand, and all that kind of stuff. And so you're trying to sell to into other languages. It's globalizing, it's the globalizing kind of field of we're talking about, globalizing our product and globalizing it. So it's trying to put it into from one source language into multiple languages to sell something. That's translation for publication. So inbound, inward, outbound, outward. There are a couple, other articles, videos more about that. Go read my 2004 localization world presentation on inbound versus outbound translation is presented in the panel on localization and customer support. So that was in 2004 in Germany, Bonn, Germany. Okay, so and I did a video on my YouTube channel that's about Google Translate, Microsoft Bing Translator, Skype Translator, and I give some examples of this. And that was a video that was actually done for an interview for the Herald Tribune, if I remember correctly. So it's inbound, outbound. This is a key thing. And the lesson learned from all this is you don't want to push button repurpose a project by taking without fully requalify the need. So what I've seen is that I've seen projects where the original implementation of the company had been done for an inbound purpose of content listing, but after they say, oh, we want to use it for this other thing, it's an outward purpose. And if you don't requalify the need and you apply the system that's really good for an inbound approach and not really made for outbound kind of purposes, it's going to run into a problem. Okay, it won't work, and that is not a technology problem. That is a sales problem. Salespeople need to qualify the need. Salespeople need to say, "Hey, well, you don't want to." No, it's just not simple. That's easy. We want to do this, and that has other services we got to do in this. Don't always say yes. Say no more than you say yes. Okay, so this is again, it comes back to these things I just mentioned. Issue poorly planned and poorly implemented projects. Now we always hear about sorry, I got a phone call coming in. We always hear about these poorly planned and implemented examples, and I'm going to say that they're poorly planned because negative news, the bad and the ugly. Remember called the good, the bad, and the ugly. Negative news, the bad and ugly, spreads like wildfire. Whereas, good and great news, the examples rarely get highlighted. And you can see that in the hotel industry and the food industry. You'll tell everybody what the worst place you ever ate, but you'll never tell people the best place you ate. Okay, that's kind of just human nature. So there are tons of examples. So you can find in all these platforms of discussion platforms all the worst cases and stuff, just worst cases, not. And it's I got the phone ringing, but it's no big deal, so I'm not going to answer it. There are several examples where there's lots of examples where it's just you hear the bad stuff, but you don't really hear about the really really good stuff. So go on the translation forums, discussion forums, Prezi and Translators Cafe, and you'll see lots of stuff, these bad examples. But you don't hear about the good ones because the good ones are secret. They're secret deals, or you can't talk about them. Or people can't talk about them until you make a customer testimony publication out about it, which takes like 2 or 3 years after you've gotten the thing going. So those kinds of things are the situation. I'll give an example here of things where I've kind of nipped things in the bud, a situation that could have been worse, or I said people don't do it. Like there was an example of an MT project years ago on an automotive domain. An experienced automotive translator came to me and said that they were receiving some MT post editing on automotive something from one of their vendor, one of the companies that's kind of intermediary with the customer and all that. And they came to me, and I got experience creating automotive MT dictionaries. Okay, creating one for one company, and a previous experience also in the truck and mining equipment terminology for MT at Caterpillar. So I got quite a bit of experience on this for this field. And I looked at the dictionary, the output that came to the MT for that person, and I just said, this is crap. Okay, this is just literally junk, because it had not been trained. It had not been trained on the automotive domain. Um, and so I contacted actually that translation the agency, and I know who to contact. I know the right person who do these, and I just told them, get their act together, get it together, and stop sending out really poorly planned MT projects that had not been trained on the vocabulary of the domain. And this was back in the rule-based days. Okay, this is before all the statistical stuff. And I just said, stop ruining your reputation by, sending out in your brand by giving really poorly implemented solutions, and then sending those to all your translators, freelancers who are doing the work. I just said, stop that, because that will kill you. And I think they did that. That did help. But this is these are the things we hear about. These are things we hear about all this transfer saying, oh, I get junk, 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 junk. Well, it's just because it was poorly planned and poorly implemented. So that is a problem of the company that sold it again. It comes down to poor implementation, not upselling to all the services, not doing the bad implementation. That's project management. Okay. So that's not, it's not the tool. It's not the tool doing that. It's the way that the project was planned was just not done right. Okay. And I've seen many examples of this. So, and that's why I say no to a lot of projects, or I tell people to say no to projects because they need to qualify how it was done, how it was implemented. And that's a lot of questions. That's why that video on the I mentioned the one for project the 2012 the virtual conference, because I say all the questions you need to ask to qualify the project to work on or not. And these are just really key. Just like you qualify any regular translation project, you got to qualify an MT post editing project too. Don't always say yes. Say no, say no, say no. And you say no to a lot of we all know the things on the if you see a project for translation that doesn't have like the dialect, answer the question, or which dialect of the language are we talking about? Questions here, red flags. Or if we don't know, they underestimated the number of. There's a massive difference between the word count between what the customer's saying and what you've got in the file. Whoa, don't touch that one, or these kinds of questions that you just things that you do on any translation project. You have the same kinds of questions for qualifying an MT post editing project. And it's just there are other questions asked, like version name and that. So go watch that video because I just go through it, bam, 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 and I don't want to go through them all here because it'll just take more time, and we're already at 37 minutes here, so it's kind of a long response. Feedback loop. I'm coming back to that. So and that's kind of came into the feedback here of how do you got to give feedback, you got to spend time on it, and this already comes down to the language industry is. I made another video here recently on saying that the kind of this series here like this that the language industry is really a repetitive business to business, business to business, business B to B market, B to B, then B to B, then B to B. It's just repetitive market. There's very little B to C, business to customer in that, except for doing language teaching. So I made a video about this the other day, and I said that really the B2B nature, this B2B nature of repetitive, cycles, multi-been chained together, one or two or more, creates a distance gap between those that are doing the authoring work or doing the MT or revision work, or those that are doing the MT post editing work from the end user who is actually needing it. And basically, there's a distance between the companies, the intermediaries, all the way. So there's really a total distance, a really distance of what people really need and what and expect the end wants, and what the people that are doing the work will be doing for them. And so this creates a lot of fuzziness, and a lot of translators and MTA process they will over-engineer the work. They will just over-engineer the whole thing, and that's they just do too much, put too much quality into something that doesn't need to be done because the end customer they don't have a contact with the direct customer, in the end, and and so some commercial translation providers are trying to MT providers are trying to bridge that gap with some feedback channels. And now you hear new terms coming up in the past, 1 or 2 years, like a human in the loop MT, that's a new one. And that's really already been done before. I mean, back in years ago, 10 or 20 years, 15 years ago, we were talking about human assisted MT, we're talking human enhanced MT. Post editing it's MT assistance. It's not the tool and then an extra task. So that's something to keep in mind here is that that feedback loop is broken by this B2B cycle. And that doesn't make it easy. Another point seven here is kind of the move, and these are all related, but the move from a rule-based approach that can be knowledge-based approach plus rule-based or rule-based pure or kind of this other thing, but the rule-based approach with dictionaries and grammar, okay, that was done for decades. That moved to a statistical approach and commercially in about 2009, though we were doing it 10 years before in research institutes and things like that, even 10 years before. So about 2009, it became kind of public getting productized with Language Weaver, and yeah, Language Weaver was pretty much the first person who went out there, and they got bought out by SDL in 2009. So no, that was a little bit earlier. I'm still it's a little bit earlier, in about 2003, 2004, Language Weaver, um, and then it became Neural MT. Um, I will say that this move from rule-based to statistical and then the neural has had some negative effects. Okay, I'm going to be very bold and say this because the hype of the whole statistical based MT and the neural MT has really focused on big data corpus, based type of MT, which makes that more important than the small projects. So yes, I will say that there are many cases where big data, big corpus, kind of MT for non-budgeted internal content. So the whole thing is about you got budgeted content where you can do translation. You have non-budgeted content, and you always want to leverage these MT providers. What they're trying to do is they're trying to leverage the budget that they have for the budget they can get for translation. They're trying to leverage out for not only the budgeted content, but the non-budgeted content too, which is a lot of internal translation. They're trying to leverage that cost over everything. Because there's not enough budget for translation because the salespeople aren't selling it right. Okay, so this comes down to it. It's just this whole cycle here. It's a vicious cycle. Um, so the focus of these MT providers, they're trying to help leverage that minimum, or the customers too. They're trying to leverage the minimum amount of that limited budget across to cover a larger amount of the unbudgeted translation. And that unbudgeted translation is growing 30% a year. I mean, survey work on. I was hearing this. And I had asked a lot of people back 25 years ago. Everybody was saying, even 30 years ago, our unbudgeted translation is the request coming is 30% more per year, and you just can't add 30% more budget and like that if people aren't selling it right. And it's all about sales pitching too. It's all about pitching too, and internal companies, even the buyer companies, maybe they're struggling a bit because they don't know how to actually show the value. And this is a hard thing. And I made some videos on these things, but trying to go through these, make another videos on that topic too about giving value and visibility to language topics. But the reality is that the big projects of internal training and news and corporate news and all these things that can use a content gisting approach. These are not, they don't really dominate the industry. They're there. But the smaller projects really dominate the industry in the translation for publication industry, okay? Because this is where the inbound and outbound and inbound, inward and outward really plays thing here. What's really key is for the inbound and inward translation. Google does this, or Microsoft. You Google Translate and Microsoft Translator. There's just the number of views that get done for just inbound purposes, just gets information. It's just phenomenal. Number of people that just use the Google Translate app or whatever, or any of these apps, or the websites or anything. It's just phenomenal. It's just grown. It's just blown up. I wrote an article in like Language International, or no, International Journal in Language and Documentation back in like 2003. I haven't got it here, but I mean, it's in my list of publications. But I talked about the internet online thing, and I gave some statistics back then. That was a long time ago. It's just huge now. So this inward one is one thing, but now if you want to leverage it for the translation of publication needs, that's where there are budgets specified. You're trying to leverage the same budget for two different purposes, and this is going to just not always work. And the reality is some of the bigger projects where it is budgeted, they're going to be broken up and split up into smaller projects anyways. And the reality in our field of the translation for production, for publication purpose, outbound purpose, the smaller projects are what dominate the overall industry. All these projects between, 3 to 5,000 words and 30,000 words, about 7,500 is probably an average. Okay, that's the majority of of all the jobs that are coming out, in all over the place. I mean, you're glad to get a 150,000 word project. So all these little account things that you can, project bidding and transition project bidding and all that stuff. So the whole industry is dominated by this, smaller projects. But the whole hype has been on corpus based, big data, SMT, NMT stuff. Whereas in reality, you don't have to have that for smaller projects. You can use an RBM, rule-based machine translation. So no, I've done several examples, lots of publication on how to do this, and even did a pros session on this one time too. At another one of the another session at the pros in like one of my sessions on it, on how to use MT efficiently or something, in 2014ish. That probably on my YouTube channel too. So I'm saying that because I'm going to come to the point here is that the reason that the shift was stated to be about the whole thing was the whole hype thing was rule-based machine translation not scalable for a large project. Okay, well that's not really true because I've actually done a lot of articles to show that I've actually done this and I can do this and it can be done. But then people say, yeah, but it's not really scalable for all the internal and non-budget stuff. Okay, well I can understand why you're pitching that way, but it's not always true. But I can understand why people are pitching that way because they're trying to get the whole. You can't make dictionaries basically for everything. Okay, I can understand that. But just read my article on translatorscafe.com in 2006 June about improved translation quality with machine translation dictionary building. I just explain it, how it can be done, and you can actually do things that are scalable, and you can be highly productive, and it can be done. And I give examples of how you can do this quickly in a short period of time. Um, uh, so rule-based systems actually can and should be used, in my opinion, for a lot of the smaller projects, because you don't need to use them for the bigger projects. Don't apply. Okay, if you got a lot of little projects of between 2,000 words, even 500 to 1,000 words, up to like 6,000 to 20,000, 30,000 words, you use a rule-based system. I mean, don't be using a statistic-based system or a neural. It's just not worth it. But in that transition from the rule-based, non-scalable approach, it was thrown out in many cases as, well, it's no longer good. It's no longer a good approach. That's not true. It's just that luckily, a few providers have kind of rebaptized it or renamed it or rebranded it, calling it hybrid MT or calling it a multi-engine MT. And luckily they've been able to deal with, handle that. But it's just, there's been too much of a focus on just the statistical and neural stuff. Because it doesn't really apply to a lot of the projects that you're doing it's great for again, content gisting, inbound and inward. It's not really going to be as efficient because of the issues of terminology and things, because you can't train those systems on terminology. Not always true, but it just has been a history of not being able to train them on terminology and vocabulary, custom. And so that just makes it difficult. So then this whole thing, and I mean, it keeps going on. We're at 48 minutes here, and I mean, this is a long response, but I'm trying to really answer the thing here. This has created a break really in the created back in the feedback loop. So there have been several. I've written published software reviews, okay, in several magazines, back in I did one in Language International in 2001 on the Reversa Pro 4. Then in 2002, I did one on Reversa Pro 5 and Reversa Expert in Multilingual Computing Magazine in 2002. Then I did another one, Sistran for Premium in 2003. And in 2004, Thomas Wassmer and I did a combined kind of project review or software review of Prompt version 6, Expert XT, and Prompt Professional. They combined one in 2004 in Multilingual Computing Magazine. I mean, there are lots of examples of software reviews where you can show um, the features that are allowed to have built-in, immediate, interactive um, feedback and improvement features for the linguist doing the work, the post-editor doing the work, and you can get immediate fixes, immediate things. You don't have to wait for a whole training cycle of a whole big data system. Okay, this was done. It's all this has been published, and I've given productivity reports on this, so and articles and shown how I did it, and even did that Prezi thing. So the video. I mean, this has been done. It can be done. It's really applicable to Shmolet. So really, we're just trying to bring back terms like human in the loop, MT and modern MT and all these kinds of things, and it's really not. It's not. It's already there. It's already been done. It's totally scalable and it works, and it will work for your small projects. It doesn't matter if you're not doing 10 million word projects. It doesn't matter. So that move that MT at RBM, the rule-based to statistical SMT, we remove what would happened is the downside of all this is we remove the ability for a normal linguist translator post editor to do post editing tasks and to be directly involved and responsible for the dictionary creation and applying creating the dictionaries as they're working, doing terminology work while they're doing the translation, make it immediate apply. And it can be done. I've done it. This happens. And we've moved that task that was possible in the RBM system, the rule-based systems, all those features I just mentioned, all those articles, in our software reviews. We've moved it to become a computational linguistics task where you got to have special skills, you got to have special coding skills, and you got to be able to do training on the MT systems, on statistical-based systems with the Moses open source kit, MT kit. I mean, all this kind of stuff. And they become very specific skills that are needed to do machine translation, make corpus-driven machine translation training, which is different than the rule-based stuff. And so this took away the power from the people, the responsibility from the linguists and the translators who are doing the tasks of the translation, where they could use their terminology knowledge and skills to be able to just put it in the dictionary immediately. This is like really easy to do. It's not rocket science. It's really easy to do if people are trained to do it. And again, there's not the training. People don't sell the training, and so and I've seen the people not get the training, and so that kind of thing. And I always train people. I've given training session on how to do MT post editing, like AMTA 2004. I gave a tutorial on this. Just said, folks, we got to get trained here. This is how to do it. It's not that hard. So this power, remove power and responsibility really has impacted the your feedback channel of improving the system immediately, which could be done with those rule-based systems and the software review that shown the software reviews, whereas you can't do it now with most of the statistical-based and the neural-based systems. They're trying to create new features to be able to do it, but it's still got to go through a training cycle. They've got some intermediate things and steps that can be done, but it's really been this has been a downfall, I say, a downside of the whole statistical side. And I'm not saying the statistical side isn't good. I'm just saying that it has its purpose in the certain types of content, but for a lot of the translation for publication stuff, it's just we got to take it a different way, folks. We got to do it a different way, and it can be done. And it doesn't always need to be the big, multi-million projects. Okay, multi-million word projects. This doesn't need to be. Another thing here, coming to the comment to someone else in the thread, I didn't get their name, but is terminology harmonization, terminology research, and this is really I would say that the vocabulary issue, the vocabulary issue of named entities, person, place, thing, is at the crux, at the center of the entire MT implementation need. And it's the crux of the problem. Um, this has always been the case for every single type of different approach of machine translation. I've worked on them all. Okay, I've worked on them all. It could be rule-based. It could be example-based machine translation with the sexy name is translation memories. Um, Knowledge-based systems. There are about three of them. SM statistical MT, hybrid MT, multi-engine MT, now neural MT, and then hybrid and multi-engine of all these different systems or whatever. But again, the statistical based and neural based MT, what they did is they removed the linguistic analysis from the MT system. It became a probability kind of matching. And in the neural MT, it's like we're guessing how it's working, because we're not sure how it's working. Statistical MT, you actually had a lot more kind of could kind of manage it more, but because it was just purely n-gram at a distance. But the neural MT has kind of added another layer of complexity to it. But because we removed that linguistic analysis that we had in the neural-based systems and in the knowledge-based systems, we've taken away the ability to actually manage it up front and to deal with dictionaries. Okay, just custom dictionaries. Okay, this is just basic, automotive and telecom and oil gas industry, and just be able to use that. And now the MT developers and the solution providers, they're trying to re-inject the linguistic analysis, this corpus-driven text analysis or language data mining or text analytics. There are lots of different terms here. I'm using terms that maybe most people aren't familiar with, but I work on this. And so this linguistic analysis and I'll call this vocabulary overriding of an MT system. In the which we did a lot in the rule-based systems, you could actually prioritize your different dictionaries based on standard dictionary, and then you could have a domain specific dictionary, and you can have a custom specific customer domain dictionary in that specific field. This could all be done in the older systems. It couldn't be done in the current systems. And now they're trying to make features to be able to do that, but it's kind of slow and hard and needs a lot of work and all that. And I don't want to go into the details of this here, and so really this overriding effect of the vocabulary using dictionaries or glossaries or whatever call these things is really key to making really machine translation effective for outward translation for publication purposes, okay, where the high quality language is critical. It's just because it's your brand, it's just your reputation. And in the inbound stuff, it doesn't really matter content interesting because the vocabulary, like I said, the accuracy of the vocabulary item term answer is just not so critical. It's just not. And then I'll come to address this, the last point. We're at 57 minutes. It's nearly an hour here on this, answering just a LinkedIn question, but LinkedIn kind of comment. But I just want to give a full version of all this with examples, because this is true. It's not just an anecdote. These are not just like, off the top of my head, things that my ideas and opinions. I mean, these are all published. A lot of the stuff has been published, so it's just people just don't know about it. Or some of the stuff is confidential, so it can't be known about. It can't be. It's not released. But I'm trying to point to those that are released to kind of give information that it does exist, and these are not all using Google Translate. And another thing too is another point I didn't say, but the whole thing of people using Google Translate and Microsoft Translator, which are generic vanilla flavor systems, non-customized. They're trying to bring those into MMOQ or whatever, and pull them into whatever your favorite cat tool is, or translation memory system or whatever, or into interfaces that are made for for translation purposes. You're trying to import with APIs and bring it in, and what we're doing is you're pulling in non-customized translation systems into the software to be able to do it. But if you don't customize it with the dictionaries, you're not going to get the vocabulary. Those named entities, those nouns are really important. Proper names, vocabulary nouns. That's where the crux of the problem of the MT quality and accuracy is, right there. And we're doing it ways that aren't allowing to customize, and that's another point. It's not just inbound, outbound. It's about custom. My localization world paper talk actually showed that the two things. There's two things of inbound, outbound, inward, inbound, versus outbound, outward. And then the other one is non-customized systems versus customizable. Those two factors are critical in trying to deal with this quality issue, you know, and sometimes the quality is less if inbound. It doesn't really matter, but the outbound, it's really important. Um, and being able to use a customized system, so you're just pulling this API of Google Translate right and just using it. No, that's not going to work. It's not going to get the customized words. You've got to have it so you can have a override that with the dictionaries. And this is the thing that all the companies are kind of struggling with. Last point now, subtitles. I want to come to that because I have actually been working on subtitles the subtitle topic and captions for past 2-3 years. And I have actually implemented at SCP. I've been working on internal needs of captions, just like a lot of the all hands meetings or town hall meetings or department meetings, division meetings, and all the doing it for the visually impaired or the hearing impaired. Okay, so accessibility. It's the whole accessibility thing right now. Diversity inclusion, and to be able to include people that can't hear that well, and colleagues that just are they're deaf or they're hearing impaired to quite a significant amount. They can't really attend the meeting and get it. So you want to provide live captions, or you want to provide captions for replays. Okay, and there's more time to actually do better quality in the replay. Okay, and that's what I was focusing on. And I could actually do incredible results with the speech. Now this is speech to text systems. I was able to actually do incredible results of, let's call it post editing on a monolingual post editing. It's not bilingual post editing, it's monolingual post editing because of the speech to text. And I was getting incredible results because I was just applying the same thing that I've done in empty post editing to a monolingual situation. And I was using the whole minimum post editing and all that, and not trying to focus on the maximum post editing for high quality because when you're doing this kind of approach of, it doesn't matter if you have punctuation, all this kind of stuff. Just get the words right, get the terminology right, And I built a dictionary to actually do this, and it got 82%. I mean, it's got 82% improvement on those 500 terms. That's not very much, but the 500 terms were the critical terms, the highly frequent ones. And if you try to pump in a huge multi-million word dictionary into a thing, it'll just kill the system. So you can't kill it. You can't deal with the performance. But it did get very high, and I was able to replace myself by building that dictionary to a certain, not completely replace myself, but I was able to replace all this frequent changes that we're doing in 7,000 minutes of caption post editing. Okay, monolingual post editing, 7,000 minutes based on a number of videos, and I was able to do some data mining. Say, here are the terms we want to customize, and by doing that, we were able to just remove a significant amount of time of my caption post editing. Okay, again, monolingual, same language, speech to text. That can apply, and that can be used also for the multilingual. I don't go more into this, but this is a really niche topic. The whole thing between captions and subtitles and the difference between them and transcripts, and I don't want to go all the details right here for the people that aren't into that, but I've been really working on this, but I've got really great results, and maybe someday I'll be able to say something about it more. I'd have to go through company approval process and all that kind of stuff. Maybe you do an article or a presentation on it sometime to say what did, because it's not really that it's just saying how it did and we're not giving the data away. Okay, so but it can be done, and it's reproducible, fully reproducible. And what's happened if we give it to another team, because I couldn't continue doing it alone, and it wasn't really in the responsibility of my department to actually do this, but I did it because I had the expertise to be able to do this. And we actually handed off to another team, and they're doing whole service on it right now. So that's been successful. I mean, that's been good. Again, it's not to replace anybody. It's to, and a lot of this is non-budgeted content for translation. It's just non-budgeted. Or sometimes it's budgeted for the high division meetings or global meetings. Okay, but when you start getting down to department meetings, taking meeting minutes, and all that kind of stuff, hey, you want a system that can do the meeting minutes for a team meeting and not have to pay for it. You don't want to start paying for even editing of these things for all the departments of an entire company. It's impossible. There would be no budget for this. So, but it's able to package and do it. And I think this is the key thing is um, this can be done in an efficient way. And but the problem is that all these other, and I did not have all those other factors I mentioned in this whole long video here. I didn't have all these language industry selling, pitching things because I was managing my entire subtitle project or subtitle caption thing. I was pitching it to the marketing comms people, the internal comms and internal employees, and I pitched it. I packaged it right. I made it the right price, and people bought it, and it was such great quality because I have expertise in the company and I have access to all of the names of people and all that because you got to fix the things. I had access to everything I need to be able to make it a really great service. And I didn't, but because outside vendors, if they're doing it, they're not going to have access to people's names dictionaries and all that kind of stuff, or people names, and the profile of like the people or the company or Outlook or the names. I could find that, I could find it immediately, and it was a great service, and I was getting way better quality than the live captions people were doing because they have no access and they're doing just a phone here. I was doing, and so my replay service, the replay caption post editing service was just so high quality. But not high quality here is different. I'm not, no punctuation, no over engineering of the things. It's just made for people to read. Can they get it quickly? Okay. I'm not no capitalization stuff, and it's got to be close, and it's okay if it's not perfect. Uh, it's got to be minimal, and the price match. The pricing was really good for the service provided, but if people wanted something more, they want to start putting capitalization and stuff at the beginning of the sentence. I said, hey, that's not the service I'm doing. If you want to do that, you got to spend the time doing it yourself. I give them the transcript file, you clean it up and do it, and then that's an extra cost. Okay, so this kind of thing is this can be done, but again, I was selling it, and I sold it right, and I sold it for the right price, and I sold the service, and it was a service that I was basically being charged cross billed internally on, and it did really well because I knew what I was selling, and I wasn't underselling it, and it can be done. But the problem, I think, what you're seeing in the post editing, like in the whole subtitle industry, it's not being done right. It's just not being sold right. Um, and with the skills and things and this all can be done technically because I've done it. But and then you can add the whole translation part of it too. Add machine translation post editing on top of that, which I've worked on too on the whole thing. Once you get the whole right thing done in the first part of it, the speech to text, then you can do for the translation for the subtitles or the caption, what do you want to call these, into the other language. All this can be done. It just has to be done right from the start. It's all planning. It's all project planning. It's well done in the skills, and you know how to do it. And if you got a really good idea of the whole process and how it's done, and manage the dictionaries on this, or the overriding of the dictionaries to make it good, really quality up front, and have the MT dictionaries on top of it, multilingual. Hey, this can all be done. So, but it's just poor planning. Okay, whatever you're seeing is just poor planning, low budget, people not selling and not selling the services as should, and so you end up with just projects that aren't worth your time. I would say no, just no. I would say no to those. I wouldn't do them because I know that it's just a waste of time. The revenue isn't worth it. So learn to say no more than say yes. Um, and work on and qualify your projects and qualify ones you accept. Again, so sorry that I've taken 1 hour and nearly 10 minutes to say all this, but I think this is going to be valuable for you and to decide how you do decision making in the future. And maybe I'll cut this up into shorter videos and segments. Okay, so thanks for listening, and feel free to contact me. Really, get back to me if you got any questions. I'll say what I can say. Some things I can't say because they're confidential, but things I can't talk about, I talk about. So I give away as much as I can for the industry to actually be better at this. And I will be bold and speak out and call out things when I see that we've done it wrong. I've done that in this video. So we can be better. We can do it better, and we should be doing it better. and I found ways to do it better. Um, and now I talk about those to help this industry really kind of get out of this rut that they've been in. You know, we've been in it for 30 years at least, and a few people are doing it right. A few people are really doing it right, and that's great. But we really need to. We can do it better. Okay, so contact me if you got any questions. Thanks for your time, really, everybody. Everybody just watching.